Welcome back to Franco Fridays. So today I'm going to cover Countess Perverse and the hardcore version, French version of it called Sexy Nature. So this film, Countess Perverse, was done at the same time, literally within 5 days shooting of How to Seduce a Virgin. Same cast, and it's really a triumph, an amazing piece of free-form cinematography, basically not loosely, but actually taken right from the short story by Robert Connell, The Most Dangerous Game, which of course was made into a movie in 1932 with Fay Wray. But this time Franco takes the short story and puts his own spin on it, including, of course, the eroticism, sadomasochism, and cannibalism, which for the time was a pretty important topic because of the airline flight crash in 1973 that resulted in people actually being necro cannibals and having eaten dead people to survive. Famous plane crash in the Alps that resulted in that. But anyway, so the topic of cannibalism was actually kind of front and center in the news back in the early 70s. So this time we've got our beautiful blonde-headed Alice Arnault, who is playing Countess Zaroff, which again is lifted right from the short story. She's married this time to Howard Vernon, who takes a more active role. He's the Count Zaroff. They are being supplied with fresh meat to hunt and kill, a la The Dangerous Game. Hunt, kill, and eat, because of the cannibalism, by a couple played by Robert Woods, who's Bob in this, and then Tanya Bousselet, who I talked about in the previous film, Sylvia, she's back in this film as well. There are so many iconic scenes in this film, particularly the hunt, with Alice Arnault wearing nothing but some jewelry and her hunting bow. I mean, just stark naked, chasing Lena Ramey. Lena Ramey shows up as one of the victims, potential victims, and it's not clear. It's not really clear how in Countess Perverse how she shows up. There's a lot of what I would call continuity errors in Countess Perverse, but I mean, obviously that can be forgiven given the fact that this thing was completed in 5 days. I mean, it's obvious there's some continuity errors, which doesn't really detract from the film too much. But at Countess Perverse, Lena Ramey just kind of dumped into the proceedings, and you're kind of wondering, well, where the hell did this come from? But essentially, Bob and his girlfriend are supplying victims to the Zaroffs for money, and Lena Ramey gets caught up in it. A great scene. Howard Vernon has so many scenes where he eats up the scenery, where he's serving meat, looks like steak, and two of the steaks, like one he gives to Lena Ramey and the other to Alice Arnault, looks halfway. I don't know. I mean, it's very rare. And then the meat he places on his plate doesn't even. I mean, it looks like just cold meat. It doesn't even look like he attempted to cook it. It's hilarious. There's scenes of all kinds of brutality in this film. At one point, Lena Ramey actually encounters and finds Howard Vernon sawing one of the victims' heads off. So that this film has a lot of interesting stuff going on. I think it's one of Franco's best films of the early 70s. Very disturbing. One of the best features of the film, which has no eroticism in it, but ironically enough, is one of the best scenes. It's simply a long tracking shot of the island from a boat with a handheld camera, and Franco's shooting close into the rocks and then pulling back and going back and forth, and it's very disorienting, which is what I guess what it intended to be as they approach Zarov's castle. Now, the location in this is kind of interesting. It was shot in Castile, Spain, at Xanadu, a place called Xanadu, which was a modernist home done by an architect that actually was also featured in She Killed in Ecstasy. Very interesting 21st century looking design from the early 70s. So the location shooting in this is just fantastic, some of the best. Now, as far as the sexy nature, what happened was the producer Robert Nessel got one look at Countess Perverse and decided this is just horrible. I mean, it's too much. And so he asked for Franco to do a toned down version, which he did, knowing that if he didn't do it, the producer would just hire someone else and ruin the movie. So Franco shot a toned down, emasculated version of Countess Perverse that was released and called The Munchers. The producer, having seen that, The Munchers, decided, well, now it needs some sex, a lot of sex. So that's how we get to the Italian unrated cut called Sexy Nature. Now, honestly, it's not a hardcore film. There's only one scene with Lena Remey going down on a guy that you could even qualify as a hardcore scene. That's it. It's really just more extended softcore scenes. But it does have some redeeming value in that the subplot, if you will, with where Lena Remey came from and how she got to be involved with Bob and subsequently sold off to the Zarovs to be tortured and hunted. That whole subplot is actually fleshed out as part of like a 12-15 minute sequence which I think was I think they should have had that sequence in the original film because it helped the storyline a lot, I think. But so there are some redeeming features to Sexy Nature, but other than this incongruous scene with Lena Remey torturing two couple, a man and a woman, which doesn't even fit in with the storyline and her character. That subplot, that's all there is. It's really not a whole lot different. So yeah, that's my coverage of the film, and I think it's one of his best. I really do. Countess Perverse. Of course, this is a Mondo Macabro release. It has, from a special feature standpoint, I'm trying to remember now what I did here. Let's see. Well, you've got the biggie is the interview with Robert Woods. That was very interesting. And then there's, of course, the obligatory interview with the expert on Franco. That's Stephen Thrower. Fantastic stuff. Also, there's an interview with the scriptwriter Alan Petit, which was just interesting. And then there's a booklet, which I can't show you, I can't show you either side of it. But there is a book about Franco. It's about 12 pages long. So yeah, this is a loaded release, and it was a limited edition release. It was $671. There was 1,000 printed out. So there you go. On the news front, Franco news front, my buddy Xbox told me this, is that the Erotic Rites of Frankenstein is going to get a new Blu-ray release, as well as The Demons. And I think that's supposed to come out in late October or November. So that'll be interesting. Next week, I'm probably going to cover a Fassbender film, but I'm going to do a horror film, one of the few that he did. I guess you could consider it horror. I'm going to cover Why His Hair Arm Run Amok, which is a very interesting film. So we're going to switch gears on Friday and give Fassbender a little love on Friday next week. That'll do it for Franco Fridays, and I appreciate you watching. Thanks.